Hey everybody, so today I'm going to be walking you through how to make goat cheese at home. And for those of you that have never made cheese before, this might sound like it's going to be really complicated or it's going to be really hard, but I promise it's not. It also really only takes about 20 minutes and it yields really good results. And you can adjust the flavor and add, garlic or rosemary or really whatever you have, whatever you like to put on your cheese, and you can do that yourself. All you need is a stove, a large heavy bottom pot, 800 grams of goat's milk or 1 quart, some limes, a wooden spoon, and cheesecloth. Goat milk, I buy mine at the big Tesco in the biggest town near me. I don't know if grocery stores in the United States sell goat milk, but it's around probably. I also use limes as my acid. There's a kind of goat cheese you can make with starter culture, but today we're going to be just using citric acid. You can also use white vinegar if you have it. It's more neutral flavor than limes or lemons. You can use lemons as well, but there are no lemons where I live. But I like the flavor of lime juice in my goat cheese, so I'm going to go ahead and use that. You'll also need cheesecloth, which for that I use this translucent white cloth that I found at a 20 baht store, which is Thailand's version of the dollar store. I haven't been able to find actual cheesecloth in stores here, and I'm too lazy to order stuff online. So this is a kind of cloth that Thai people use to keep dust off of their dishes, but I've found it's really pretty good for cheese making. If you're a first timer or if you're just kind of nervous about making cheese, I would really recommend you use a thermometer. I'm gonna eyeball it today because I've made it before just eyeballing it and it turned out fine, so I'll walk you through that way too. But just if you're feeling nervous, a thermometer is a good thing to have, and it can keep you from burning your milk or from overcooking the curds. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so to start, you're going to heat up about 800 grams or 1 quart of goat's milk. So that's a little bit less than 3 of these 300 gram containers. If you're buying your goat's milk in the US, buying a quart shouldn't be too difficult. I plan on using the rest of this to make mac and cheese because I think that's going to be delicious. If you're wondering, well, what the hell else do I do with extra goat's milk? You can also just pour it all in. You would just have to use a little bit of extra acid when you add the acid to it. So we start by heating up the goat's milk to a gentle boil, which will look foamy, essentially. If you have a thermometer, that's about 180 degrees, and you want to turn the heat off as soon as it gets to this point. You also want to be stirring it before it gets to this point because you want to avoid the milk on the bottom burning. If it does burn, don't panic. You can totally still make cheese out of that. It's just going to have a slightly burnt flavor to it, which you want to try to avoid if you can. So also keep the heat on low because keep putting it on high can also make the bottom burn pretty fast. So I forgot to add, at this point you don't want to add any other flavors. You just want the goat's milk to get to a boil by itself. If you are going to add something like herbs or honey, you want to wait till it's a finished cheese. Wait till it's the curds and then you mix that into the curds before you drain it. So as you can see, it is now at a gentle boil. It's foamy and simmering. I'm gonna go ahead and turn that off because I don't wanna overcook my curds like I said. And right after you turn it off, you're gonna wanna go ahead and pour your acid in. You're gonna wanna stir it in. And you might be able to see, sorry, there's some steam. You might be able to see the curds starting to separate a little bit. Once you've stirred the acid in, you can go ahead and set your lid on that and let it sit for about 10 minutes. So we'll check back on this in 10 minutes. Okay, so it's been about 10 minutes, and as you can see, the curd has separated from the whey. The curd is the part of the goat cheese that's gonna be cheese, and the whey is the liquid that's left over after making the cheese. So the next step is to pour it through a cheesecloth in a strainer and drain the cheese. So you want to have a strainer and a bowl to catch the whey in when you're draining the cheese. You can use any kind of strainer. I'm using a colander and a large mixing bowl, but they also don't have to be perfectly like fitting within each other, just anything to catch the liquid as your cheese drains. Then you want to line the colander with your cheesecloth. I fold mine in half. And with regular cheesecloth, you're probably not going to want to just use one layer. You're going to want to fold it in half maybe a couple of times. Just make sure that you're leaving some over the bowl so you can tie up the ends when you're draining the cheese. You can go ahead and pour your curds and whey into the bowl. Then you can go ahead and gather up the sides of the cheesecloth and lift it up like this. And then you can start to squeeze some of the whey out. Just be careful because it is going to be hot. So right now, the whey is draining into the bowl. And what you can do for this part, because it is too hot to really squeeze too much right now, is to grab a rubber band and use that to hang it over a wooden spoon, which you can put over the pot that you used. This will let the whey drain out without you having to burn your hands. See, you can see it's sort of around the spoon that way, and just hang that over the pot and let it drain out a little bit. You can always twist it or pull it up a little bit to squeeze some more of the liquid out. You also want to be careful with a cheese like goat cheese when you're squeezing it to get some of the liquid out, because goat cheese does have a really fine curd that if you're squeezing it too much and too hard, some of the curd can squish out through the cheesecloth, or cheesecloth in my case. That's another reason to fold it in half, and why you want to just kind of let it do its own thing and drain. So, you're doing great. You're going to want to leave this now for about an hour. You can come back and check on it, squeeze some more liquid out of it. There's really no harm that can come to the cheese from doing this. It's just a little easier to let it chill and let some of the liquid drain out of it. So I would come back and check on it in an hour, and then we'll see if it's the texture we want it to be.
1 hour later.
So the goat cheese now has been draining for about an hour, and you can see it's still a little softer than we want it to be. You can try squeezing some more moisture out of it, but the less moisture that's in it, the harder that's going to be. What you can also try is mixing it up a little and then squeezing some more moisture out of it, getting some of the drier curd away from the sides. But now is a perfect time to add salt or other flavorings, because this is a really good soft texture to still mix it in. Okay, so now that you've got your mostly drained curd, now is a good time to add salt. I'm going to be working with a little bit of this truffle salt, thanks to my mom. But I'm also going to use just some regular salt too. You could add sea salt, fleur de sel, whatever is good. The reason that you want to add the salt later is because if you add it when it's still really liquidy, a lot of the flavor is just gonna drain out with the curd. Drain out with the whey. And so that kind of defeats the purpose. But at this point, salt is a great idea. Oh man. This stuff is amazing. It smells amazing. It's from a really high quality business in Seattle called the Truffle Cafe. Truffle Queen. And you see, I'm adding like a tiny bit of salt. You don't want to go overboard. You can always add salt. You can't take salt out. I'm gonna add a little bit more. If you're making this for yourself, you can lick the spoon, it's fine. If you're making it for other people, just remember to get a new spoon or every time you taste, or fork if you're me. That's delicious. So I'm gonna go ahead and gather it back up here. See? Still got some moisture in there. It's okay to have a firm hand at this point. The curds are getting thicker. Some might squeeze out. If you look closely, you can see, and you can kind of squish it around to move the drier curds to the inside, and let some of the moisture towards the outside. Opening it back up. See, it's still not quite dry. It really should hold its shape a little bit better than this one is doing, which is why I'm squeezing so much moisture out of it. Okay, let's try opening this back up again and seeing what it's looking like. Okay, it's looking a little better. It's still not holding its shape the way I would like it to. Ooh, that was an ant. There was an ant in there. That's okay. You can see though, it holds its shape when I hold it, but it's very soft. So not, again, quite the texture that we're looking for in a harder fresh cheese like a log of goat cheese usually is. So what I'm probably gonna do is just let this hang up again for a little while, see what happens with that. But it's looking really good, it's tasting really good, and we're just gonna check back on it in a little while. Okay, so what I actually ended up doing was sort of getting in there and manually squeezing out a lot more of the moisture because I didn't really feel like letting it sit was going to do the trick, or that it was just gonna take a really long time and I got kind of impatient. So I twisted it up like this a bunch. You may get some cheese kind of squirting out the holes in the cheesecloth. That's okay. You can scrape it off with a spoon and eat it. It's pretty good. But as you can see, it holds its shape much better now. It's It's a lot less soft. I'll also say, like, it's not going to be completely as hard as a log of goat cheese from the grocery store will be, because that's been in the fridge for at least a couple of days. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna shape it into a log, which you can see is happening pretty quickly. It's still pretty soft, but like I said, it is really warm where I live, so I'm gonna go ahead and let this set up in the fridge. So yeah, that is pretty much how you make a log of chèvre in a home kitchen. It's just a fresh cheese. Similar cheeses, like with similar making processes, ricotta is one, queso fresco is another one. I'm sure there are others, but any cheese where you just boil the milk, add acid, separate the wheys and the curds, and then drain it is gonna be honestly pretty much the same as that. A very straightforward process, not daunting, not scary. If you want to add aging or cultures or anything in there like that, that gets a little bit more tricky because there's some temperature regulation that needs to go on, and it needs to sit out for much longer, and things can go wrong because you're letting bacteria process the cheese. But with this, very straightforward, none of that. But anyway, yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it was interesting. I hope it inspired you to make your own goat cheese. And if you have any questions, go ahead and ask them. I will link the recipe that I used as a guide. And yeah, I hope you tune in next time, because I have no idea what I'm gonna make. Whatever I have the ingredients for. Thank you.